Financial lack, material lack, and poverty in the light of the Grail Message. A clarification, a correction, and an enlightenment for all humanity. Preface. Humanity has spoken endlessly about wealth and poverty. Countless books have been written, seminars delivered, and philosophies debated. Yet in all of these, the true essence of financial lack, material lack, and poverty remains largely misunderstood. Men and women wander through life chasing shadows, pursuing riches without understanding the laws that govern abundance, fearing poverty without knowing what it truly is, and praying for wealth while violating the very spiritual conditions that allow it to unfold. This book comes as a clarifying light, not born of economic theories, motivational psychology, or worldly assumptions, but of a higher, timeless wisdom, the wisdom shining through the Grail Message, which reveals the infallible laws of creation that govern human existence in every sphere, including the material one. Humanity is trapped today in countless misconceptions. Many imagine poverty to be a sign of God's rejection. Others see wealth as proof of divine favor. Some attribute financial scarcity to fate, luck, or the actions of enemies. Others live in cycles of lack without ever knowing the spiritual roots feeding it. But in creation, nothing happens by chance. There are no accidents, no coincidences, no arbitrary favors. Every condition, whether abundance or lack, has its origin, its cause, its meaning, and its pathway to resolution. The Grail Message teaches that the human spirit is responsible for the form of its existence, for in the weaving of the creative laws, every thought, every desire, every action, every negligence, and every inner attitude sets into motion radiations that return with unfailing precision. Poverty is not merely an economic state, it is the outer expression of an inner disturbance, a misalignment with creation's rhythms, often stretching over years or even lifetimes. Yet this book does not come to condemn. It comes as a guide, a correction, and an invitation. A guide for mankind to understand the true nature of financial and material conditions. A correction to long-held errors about destiny, spiritual punishment, or divine favoritism. An invitation to rise from ignorance, fear, dependency, and helplessness into self-responsibility, clarity, and spiritual maturity. For those in deep financial struggle, this book offers hope, but not the superficial hope of wishful thinking. It offers the hope born of understanding, the hope that arises when one recognizes the immutable laws governing life and begins to walk consciously within them. For those seeking a way out, this book reveals the real chains that bind, chains not forged by governments, employers, or families, but by false beliefs, wrong inner attitudes, radiational distortions, spiritual sloth, misuse of gifts, and ignorance of the laws that produce or dissolve lack. For humanity at large, this book provides an eye-opening perspective. Financial abundance is not a reward. Poverty is not a curse. Both are consequences. When man understands, he acts differently. When he acts differently, he sows differently. When he sows differently, he reaps differently. And in creation, the harvest never fails. This book aims to turn humanity away from superstition, fear, and confusion, and toward clarity in the light of truth. It illuminates the spiritual principles behind material conditions, the invisible radiations behind visible circumstances, the responsibility behind outcomes, and the path forward for anyone who truly wishes to rise. May every sincere seeker find here the insight needed to step out of the fog of misconceptions and into the liberating clarity of the laws of creation. And may the light guide all who read this work toward inner awakening, responsible action, and the spiritual dignity that naturally leads to outward stability and material unfolding. Introduction. Financial lack. Material lack. Poverty. Humanity shudders at these words, yet almost no one truly understands what they mean. Even fewer understand what causes them. And hardly anyone knows how to rise out of them permanently, in harmony with the laws of creation. For centuries, mankind has explained poverty through shallow earthly theories: economics, politics, luck, misfortune, lack of opportunity, lack of education, oppression, or inherited disadvantage. Though these factors may influence one's material pathway, they do not penetrate deeply enough to reveal the real origin of financial lack. For what appears outwardly as poverty is only the symptom of far deeper inner processes: processes governed with incorruptible precision by the spiritual laws that weave through creation. These laws, the law of reciprocal action, the law of the attraction of homogeneous species, the law of spiritual gravity, the law of movement, the law of sowing and reaping, and many more, form the living framework of human existence. They cannot be bribed, bypassed, negotiated, or ignored. They act silently but powerfully, shaping the flow of every human life. Yet mankind, in its confusion, attributes poverty to fate, curses, wicked spirits, enemies, ancestral troubles, bad luck, or even God himself. These errors have created generations of fear, superstition, confusion, and helplessness. They have led humanity into spiritual paralysis, preventing millions from recognizing the real cause of their suffering and the real path to liberation. The Grail Message lifts the veil. It shows with crystalline clarity that financial lack does not begin in the wallet, nor in the economy, nor in the environment, nor in the family background. It begins in the inner state of the human spirit, and in the thought forms, volitions, and radiations that this spirit continually releases into creation. The human spirit is never a passive victim of circumstances. It is an initiator, a living source of radiations that attract corresponding experiences into its earthly existence. Whatever a person inwardly wills, values, fears, clings to, or rejects forms threads of living energy that weave into the great carpet of destiny. Thus, financial lack is not merely an outer condition. It is an inner misalignment. It is a disorder in one's relationship with the living laws that govern abundance. This book is written to 1. Clarify what financial lack, material lack, and poverty truly are. Not the limited, human definition, but the spiritual reality behind these conditions. Their causes, their purpose, their consequences, and their solution. 2. Correct the deadly misconceptions that have enslaved humanity. Misconceptions that have blocked people from rising, kept them in cycles of fear and stagnation, and convinced them that poverty is fate, punishment, or inevitable. 3. Enlighten the earnest seeker. Those who feel trapped, uncertain, or frustrated by their circumstances, and who long for an escape but do not know where to begin. For the light does not shame, punish, or condemn. The light reveals. The light awakens. The light restores. And the light guides. This book is not a manual for quick riches, worldly manipulation, or earthly trickery. It is not a motivational piece filled with empty affirmations. It is a spiritual compass, pointing toward the laws that produce lasting material harmony. True wealth is not a game of chance. It is not a favor from fate. It is not dependent solely on connections, backgrounds, or luck. True wealth is the natural fruit that arises when a human being aligns with the eternal laws of creation. And true poverty, the deep, painful kind, is the result of disconnection from these laws. The purpose of this book is to reveal why some people struggle endlessly despite their efforts, why others rise seemingly effortlessly, why giving, praying, fasting, affirming, or working hard sometimes still fails. Why some people attract lack repeatedly, even if they escape it temporarily. Why real abundance begins within the core of the human spirit. Why spiritual clarity is the key to material elevation. Why poverty is not a curse but a consequence, and therefore, reversible. The Grail Message shows that creation is perfect, harmonious, fair, just, and self-correcting. No one is locked into poverty forever. No one is destined to remain in want. No human spirit is condemned to lack. But neither can anyone escape the consequences of inner errors. Every human being stands today exactly where his or her past volitions have led. And every human being can rise from this point, if he or she begins to live in harmony with the light. This book is therefore a call to awakening, a call to responsibility, and a call to liberation. Financial lack will never be fully understood until mankind sees it through the lens of the laws of creation. Now the light shines. Now the truth is unveiled. Now the way opens for every earnest seeker. Let us step into the clarity. Let us walk into the truth. Let us rise through the laws. Part 1. The True Nature of Financial Lack and Poverty. Unveiling the reality behind human conditions. Chapter 1. What is poverty? The meaning beyond appearances. Most people define poverty simply as not having enough money. They measure it by the size of a house, the type of clothing worn, the numbers in a bank account, or the ability to handle daily expenses. Yet the Grail Message teaches that every earthly condition is but the shadow of an inner state. What humanity calls poverty externally is merely the symptom of a deeper disorder spiritually. True poverty begins long before money disappears. It begins in the blood, in the thoughts, in the will direction of a human being. It begins when a person disconnects from the laws of creation that naturally generate upward movement, productivity, clarity, and provision. A man may sit in a mansion and still be poor in spirit, full of fear, insecurity, spiritual emptiness, and dependence on others. Another may live humbly yet radiate inner richness, independence, healthy intuition, clear thinking, and gratitude that draws opportunities. Poverty is not the empty purse, it is the empty radiational state of a soul that has stopped receiving, ordering, and transmitting energy correctly through the natural spiritual laws. Humanity fails to see this because it focuses on effects, ignoring causes. It tries to cure poverty with loans, grants, empowerment workshops, and motivational slogans. But without the necessary inner transformation, these remedies collapse like weak scaffolding around a decaying structure. The Grail Message emphasizes that poverty is a disordered connection to the laws of motion. Financial lack is delayed fruit from past thoughts, choices, and sowings. Material insufficiency is a warning signal, not an identity. True understanding of poverty requires seeing through appearances and identifying the spiritual misalignment that created it. Only then can real change begin. Chapter 2. Financial lack is a spiritual, not material problem. One of the most damaging misconceptions in human thinking is the belief that financial lack is caused by insufficient money in circulation or by external conditions alone, economy, government, background, or lack of opportunities. But the Grail Message illuminates a deeper reality: all lack begins in the spirit. Money itself is not the source of abundance, it is merely a vehicle, a material echo of spiritual movement or stagnation. Financial lack emerges when a human being thinks wrongly, wills wrongly, acts wrongly, or relates to life in a manner that contradicts the natural upbuilding forces. When a person's inner life is chaotic, fearful, impatient, greedy, or indolent, the spiritual radiations that should draw opportunities and fruitful connections become darkened, disturbed, or weakened. This is why two people can receive the same opportunity: one multiplies it, the other wastes it. One attracts helpers, ideas, and progress, the other attracts setbacks, debt, and stagnation. The difference is not luck, it is radiation. A disordered inner state continuously emits heaviness, doubt, insecurity, confusion, inconsistency, and negativity. These radiations repel the very elements that make material success possible. Therefore, financial lack cannot be cured by money alone. Give money to a disordered soul and it will disappear like water poured into a basket. But align a soul with the spiritual laws, and even small beginnings grow naturally into abundance. The truth is clear: poverty is primarily a spiritual problem, and therefore its solution is spiritual clarity, spiritual discipline, and spiritual obedience. Material improvement naturally follows as a reflection of this inner restructuring. Chapter 3. The distortion of abundance in human thinking. If poverty is widely misunderstood, abundance is even more so. Humanity associates abundance with luxury, accumulation, excess, and possession. People equate it with owning many things or being able to spend without restraint. But true abundance, from the perspective of the Grail Message, is harmonious movement within the laws of creation, where everything needed for one's earthly mission flows naturally and in the right measure. Abundance is not waste, indulgence, greed, hoarding, comparison, or living to impress others. These attitudes distort the human will and call forth reciprocal effects that eventually lead to loss and hardship. The modern world teaches people to chase wealth, to hustle, to grab their share. Yet this restless chasing often drives them away from the calm clarity necessary to perceive genuine opportunities. Abundance is not found in chasing, it is found in alignment. The distortion arises when humans believe material things bring meaning, depend on possessions for identity, fear lack to the point of anxiety, misuse funds for status or pleasure, or view wealth as a sign of superiority. These errors create inner dissonance, which eventually manifests outwardly as instability, debt, confusion, or sudden collapse. True abundance is based on clarity of purpose, purity in intention, gratitude, upright diligence, responsible stewardship, and respect for the spiritual laws. A person who thinks abundantly but greedily is not abundant. A person who appears wealthy but is spiritually empty is not abundant. A person with little who radiates peace, progress, and inner stability is already on the path to abundance. Thus, poverty and abundance are not opposites but two conditions arising from the direction of one's inner life. Human thinking, distorted by materialism, has created false definitions that trap many in unnecessary suffering. To correct financial lack, the human being must first correct the distortion in thinking that created it. Chapter 4. Why poverty cannot be understood without the laws of creation. Humanity has spent centuries trying to explain poverty through economic theories, political systems, social injustice, natural scarcity, and environmental limitation. Yet none of these explanations ever reach the root, because they examine only the outer symptoms, not the inner causes. Poverty, like all human conditions, is woven into the fabric of the laws that govern existence, the laws that flow from the will of the Almighty. Without understanding these laws, humans attempt to solve poverty the way a blind man attempts to rearrange a room, by guessing, stumbling, and injuring himself further. In the light of the Grail Message, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. Poverty is not merely an economic condition. It is a radiational consequence. It arises where the human spirit has broken, ignored, or misused the laws of creation that guarantee fruitful developments and harmonious outcomes. These laws, reciprocal action, attraction of homogeneous species, spiritual gravity, and the law of sowing and reaping, govern all movement, including the flow of material resources. When a person lives, thinks, works, or wills against these laws, stagnation must appear. That stagnation manifests outwardly as financial lack, blockages, and poverty. The human misconception. People imagine poverty as imposed from the outside, by governments, employers, or circumstances. But in truth, poverty germinates within long before it appears without. It begins with inner disorder, wrong volitions, indolence, fear, envy, dishonesty, falseness, or detachment from reality. These form radiational clouds that suffocate an individual's ability to attract the currents that lead to fruitful labor, opportunities, or clarity. The law responds, not punishes. The laws of creation do not punish. They mirror. They respond. Where there is diligence, purity of motive, uprightness, gratitude, courage, and a genuine desire to contribute, the laws return increase. Where there is sloth, complaint, bitterness, greed, deception, or dependence, the laws return limitation. Thus every form of poverty has a radiational origin. And unless a person understands this, he will misdiagnose his condition and attempt remedies that cannot work, prayers without change, hustling without direction, business without integrity, or ambition without inner alignment. Why understanding the laws is liberation? When you understand that poverty is connected to your radiation, you stop blaming fate and start correcting yourself. You stop struggling blindly and begin moving with the current of creation. This is when the first rays of abundance begin to break through. Poverty cannot be solved from the outside. It can only dissolve when the human spirit rises into harmony with the laws that govern abundance. Chapter 5. The role of radiations in wealth, work, and material outcomes. To understand wealth, one must understand radiation, the invisible field that surrounds every human being, every thought, every action, and every volition. All life, all movement, all success and failure are radiational before they are physical. In the Grail Message, it is revealed that the human spirit radiates continually, forming a magnetic field that interacts with the currents of creation. These radiations determine what a person attracts, repels, creates, or destroys. Thus, wealth is not primarily money, it is a radiational condition that allows fruitful developments to occur naturally. 1. Your inner state produces your outer state. Each human being emits a radiational quality based on their inner condition: confidence or fear, gratitude or complaint, order or confusion, diligence or indolence. These radiations combine to form a radiational climate. In this climate, certain opportunities can flourish, while others die. Many people work hard externally while radiating confusion, fear, resentment, envy, or discouragement internally, and then wonder why their results remain stagnant. The radiation cancels the labor. 2. Wealth requires radiational alignment. Wealth flows along pathways of clarity, courage, responsibility, creativity, discipline, and service. These qualities produce strong, bright radiations that draw corresponding circumstances: trustworthy partners, fruitful ideas, timely opportunities, favorable conditions, and growth. On the other hand, poverty arises where a person radiates doubt, fear, laziness, wastefulness, self-deception, victimhood, resentment, irresponsibility, love of comfort without readiness to labor. Such radiations choke the possibility of good outcomes, for the laws cannot bring increase to a field that is radiationally barren. 3. Work is a radiational exchange. Every task a person performs emits radiations. The way you speak, the way you think, the way you carry out your duties, the seriousness or negligence you bring into your work, all radiate outward and form bridges or barriers. People do not reward your work alone, they reward the radiation of your work. This is why two individuals doing the same job may earn vastly different results. 4. Money follows radiation, not the reverse. People assume money creates confidence, value, or momentum. But in truth, radiations create money. Money is only a physical representation of inner activity. A person with poor radiations loses money easily. A person with elevated radiations attracts opportunities effortlessly. This is why giving capital to someone with the wrong inner state never changes their life, they simply radiate the capital away. 5. Radiations are the real currency of life. In creation, radiations are the true currency. They determine your level of productivity, your capacity for ideas, your ability to attract collaborators, your magnetism, your resilience and clarity, your success or stagnation. When a person corrects their radiations, poverty dissolves because the channels of increase reopen. The transformation begins within. Poverty is not a punishment, it is a radiational signal that something within must change. Investigate your volitions, your habits, your motives, your thoughts, your words, and your daily conduct. Correct the radiation, and the material outcome will follow with absolute certainty, for it is bound by the laws. Where bright radiations exist, abundance must follow. Where dark radiations dominate, poverty cannot be avoided. Part 2. The spiritual laws behind material conditions. Understanding the invisible forces shaping human prosperity. Chapter 6. The Law of Reciprocal Action in Personal Finance. Whatever a human being sets into motion must return to him in full harvest. Among all the misconceptions surrounding wealth and lack, none is as destructive as the belief that money comes by luck or that poverty descends without cause. Human beings observe only the outer effects, the visible results, yet remain blind to the inner workings from which these results arise. But the laws of creation, which operate with incorruptible precision, do not recognize luck. They know only cause and effect, seed and harvest, sowing and reaping. The law of reciprocal action, often spoken of but rarely understood, is the spiritual backbone behind every material condition. Nothing a person thinks, desires, speaks, or does goes into the void. Everything returns in a form that corresponds exactly to the radiational quality of what was initially set out. This law governs finances as surely as it governs relationships and spiritual ascent. Laziness, dishonesty, wastefulness, lack of initiative, inner heaviness, greed, envy, and mental disorderliness are radiations that can only attract financial instability, missed opportunities, losses, and blockages. On the other hand, diligence, clarity, perseverance, gratitude, uprightness, order, and joy radiate streams of luminous energy that attract helpful people, ideas, opportunities, and material openings. Financial lack never begins with the bank account. It begins with the inner state of the spirit and its radiational output. Poverty is first sown as inner disorder long before it becomes outer deprivation. Prosperity, likewise, is first sown inwardly as clarity of purpose, nobility of will, disciplined thought, genuine service, and joyful activity. The law of reciprocal action is not punishment. It is justice. It is help. It is the only guarantee that no human being will ever be cheated of the harvest of his own choices. Those who understand this law stop blaming others for their financial condition. They begin correcting the seeds they sow. And as soon as new seeds are sown, the new harvest must come, for creation cannot deny the law woven into its very structure. This law is the true foundation of all prosperity. Chapter 7. The Law of Attraction of Homogeneous Species, Radiational Alignment. You stand only where your radiations place you. Humanity imagines that wealth is attracted by intelligence, beauty, social networks, or luck. Yet the true magnet behind every outward condition is radiation, the subtle but powerful emanation of the human spirit that moves silently through creation, drawing to itself only what is of the same nature. Every human being is like a living magnet, constantly attracting that which matches his inner vibration. Fear attracts misfortune, anxiety attracts confusion, doubt attracts stagnation, greed attracts deceivers, envy attracts humiliation, disorder attracts chaos. On the other hand, clarity attracts opportunities. Gratitude attracts helpers. Honesty attracts trust. Diligence attracts employers, customers, and productivity. Joy attracts creativity and renewed strength. Poverty cannot cling to a soul who genuinely radiates luminous striving, inner order, productive readiness, and noble intention. It simply cannot remain, because it is not of the same species. Likewise, prosperity cannot remain with a soul whose inner life radiates indolence, dishonesty, bitterness, and spiritual heaviness. The law of attraction of homogeneous species silently reorganizes the environment around every human being to suit the nature of his inner world. People say, "Why do the same problems follow me everywhere?" They do not realize that their radiation is the invitation. One cannot outrun one's radiational output. It is carried everywhere like a spiritual signature, commanding creation to respond. This explains why two people can be offered the same opportunity, yet one prospers and the other remains stagnant. It explains why some constantly lose money even when earning well, and why others attract success even from little beginnings. Change your inner radiations, your habits of thought, your attitude towards work, your gratitude, your willingness to serve, your faithfulness, your purity of intention, and the conditions around you must rearrange themselves accordingly. They have no choice. The law compels them. Prosperity is not luck, it is radiational alignment. Chapter 8. The Law of Spiritual Gravity, Why Some Rise and Some Sink. Only what is light rises, what is heavy must sink. The law of spiritual gravity is one of the most misunderstood laws because humanity interprets it only materially. Yet in creation, this law operates radiationally. Everything that carries heaviness, anger, greed, jealousy, indolence, dishonesty, fear, depression, bitterness, and worry, sinks into circles where these same conditions dominate. In financial life, this means that people with inner heaviness find themselves perpetually drawn to environments, relationships, opportunities, and outcomes that reflect their weight. They sink into circles of poverty, mismanagement, loss, exploitation, and stagnation, not because a higher power has rejected them, but because their radiational weight anchors them there. Lightness, however, joy, clarity, gratitude, love of work, uprightness, hope, courage, initiative, rises upward. These radiations elevate the human spirit into brighter spheres of influence where opportunities, inspiration, helpful people, solutions, and progress exist. This is not symbolic, it is literal within the radiational mechanics of creation. Many poor individuals are not trapped by circumstance but by inner heaviness. Their spirit is weighed down by emotional and moral burdens that make rising impossible. And no amount of money given externally can lift this weight internally. Unless the inner burden is removed, even gifts of wealth slip through the fingers and evaporate. This is why sudden riches acquired without inner transformation frequently end in ruin. The radiational heaviness pulls the new wealth down into the same level from which the person has not risen. The law of spiritual gravity is liberating once understood. Every human being can rise, by becoming lighter. Remove resentment. Dissolve envy. Reject excuses. Embrace responsibility. Radiate joy. Love work. Be honest in small things. Lightness is not an emotion but a spiritual condition. Once the inner weight lifts, the outer life begins to change with breathtaking swiftness. The spirit rises, and with this rise comes access to brighter paths, paths where poverty cannot follow. Chapter 9. The Law of Movement. Wealth requires flow. Humanity has long misunderstood wealth. Most people perceive wealth as something to be held, stored, guarded, and accumulated. Yet in the structure of creation, nothing living remains stagnant. Movement is the pulse of existence. Stagnation is the signature of decay. Just as blood must circulate through the body or it clots, wealth must flow through the human being or it dies where it is trapped. In the Grail Message, movement is life. Wherever movement stops, decline begins. Poverty is therefore not a punishment from God but often the natural consequence of inner stagnation. Stagnation in thinking, in willing, in giving, in learning, in creativity, and in courage. Every form of prosperity is linked to the human spirit's willingness to participate in the great cycle of giving and receiving, a cycle upheld by the laws. A person may pray fervently for increased income but refuse to release knowledge, time, skill, service, or generosity. This spiritual inconsistency creates a blockage. Nothing can enter where nothing is allowed to leave. Movement includes movement of thought, conception of new ideas, movement of will, decision, courage, resolve, movement of the hands, work, skill, creation, movement of resources, giving, investing, supporting, exchanging. Where one or more of these are frozen, material stagnation follows. In the spiritual dimension, money is not merely paper or metal. It is condensed radiation, a crystallization of human activity, intention, and exchange. Therefore, financial stagnation always begins as radiational stagnation. For example, a person who hoards due to fear radiates contraction. A person who refuses to give radiates isolation. A person who works without joy radiates heaviness. A person who stops learning radiates dullness. Each of these radiations makes wealth flow away rather than toward the individual. Thus the key to breaking financial lack is not hustling harder in panic, but restoring movement where life has been blocked. Give correctly. Work joyfully. Learn continuously. Act courageously. Serve willingly. Create freely. Then wealth must flow to you, because you have entered the stream of movement where abundance is naturally generated. Chapter 10. The Law of Sowing and Reaping. Clarifying misused doctrines. Few laws have been as misquoted, misused, and misunderstood as the law of sowing and reaping. Many religious teachings turned it into a tool for manipulation or fear, reducing it to, give money so God will give you more. Thus countless souls were misled, sowing blindly into human institutions while remaining inwardly unchanged. But the spiritual law is not an emotional bargaining system, it is an impersonal, inviolable law woven into creation long before humanity existed. The true meaning is this. Every thought, every volition, every action, and every radiational output must return to its origin in multiplied form. You reap exactly what you sow, whether you sowed it knowingly or unknowingly. If you sow dishonesty in business, lack of trust will return. If you sow laziness, emptiness must return. If you sow fear, limitation will return. If you sow initiative, doors will open. If you sow clarity, opportunities will find you. And if you sow nothing, you will reap nothing, regardless of prayers or spiritual rituals. This law explains why some persist in poverty despite working extremely hard. Hard work alone is not sufficient if the inner sowing is wrong, if the soil of the spirit is full of fear, resentment, bitterness, or confusion. These radiations corrupt the seed before it enters the field of life. Only when sowing is done with clarity, with pure intention, with proper knowledge, with joy, with a willingness to uplift others, does the seed take root in fertile soil and return in abundant harvests. Equally important is recognizing what is not sowing. Giving out of fear of punishment is not sowing. Giving out of desire for manipulation is not sowing. Giving without inner conviction is not sowing. Giving while holding grudges is not sowing. Giving while disobeying the laws in other areas of life is not sowing. True sowing is a radiational act of the Spirit, not merely a physical donation or material effort. This law removes every excuse and every illusion of favoritism. No one is blessed by chance, favoritism, or luck. No one is cursed by God. Each person walks in the harvest of the seeds they themselves scattered into creation. And because the law is exact and perfect, it also means no seed is ever wasted. Even the smallest act of goodwill must return. Even the smallest step toward improvement must return. Even the smallest increase in clarity must return. Therefore, escaping poverty is not a mystery of fate but a process of deliberate sowing, carried out with pure volition and understanding of the spiritual laws that weave human destiny. Part 3. Misconceptions that keep people poor. Correcting humanity's most dangerous errors. Humanity suffers not because abundance is scarce, but because wrong convictions choke the soul's ability to receive. Poverty is rarely the immediate result of circumstances, rather, circumstances are often the visible shadows cast by hidden inner distortions. This section reveals the most powerful misconceptions, responsible for keeping millions of people radiationally blocked, spiritually stagnant, and materially deprived. These errors operate like invisible chains, binding generations until truth dissolves them. Let the light of the Grail now illuminate these falsehoods. Chapter 11. The lie that poverty is holiness. There is no misconception more destructive, more crippling, and more offensive to the will of the Creator than the belief that poverty is holy, or that material lack pleases God. This poisonous idea has darkened humanity for thousands of years. It has produced stagnation, self-inflicted suffering, and passive acceptance of misery. It has prevented men and women from rising, striving, creating, and unfolding their God-given abilities. Where did this lie begin? The distortion arose when people misunderstood the words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." They assumed it meant, "Blessed are those who lack money, comfort, or resources." This is warping the truth. Poor in spirit simply means humble, open, teachable, unburdened by arrogance. It has nothing to do with financial condition. To claim that God delights in your poverty is to accuse Him of cruelty, of creating you only to withhold from you. This is an insult to the perfect justice that animates creation. Why poverty cannot be holy? Poverty weakens initiative, suppresses growth, encourages fear, fosters desperation, restricts service to others. Anything that stifles the Spirit's ability to unfold its talents cannot be holy. Holiness is expansion. Poverty is contraction. Holiness is clarity. Poverty breeds confusion. Holiness uplifts. Poverty burdens. Which one resembles the will of the light? The spiritual reality. The Grail Message makes it clear. The Creator desires human beings to develop, work, give, rise, and contribute. All of this requires energy, resources, and the freedom that abundance brings. Poverty is not a virtue. Virtue lies only in your inner attitude toward possession, not in the absence of it. Chapter 12. The misinterpretation of God will provide. Few sentences have produced more passivity, negligence, and spiritual paralysis than this one. God will provide. Yes, He will, but not in the way people misuse the phrase. This misunderstanding has created generations of people who refuse to plan, reject responsibility, decline effort, avoid sowing, and expect miraculous intervention. This is not faith. This is fatal laziness disguised as piety. What Jesus actually meant. When Jesus said, "Your heavenly Father knows what you need," He was referring to the laws of creation, laws already in motion, already perfect, already just. The Creator does not intervene randomly. He has woven laws that guarantee results from your inner condition and actions. The provision of God is in the soil waiting for the farmer, in the inspiration waiting for the thinker, in the opportunity waiting for the prepared will, in the talent waiting for cultivation. The spiritual laws are the storehouse of God's provision. But these laws respond only to effort, clarity, earnest seeking, right volition, and radiational alignment. Why misinterpretation causes poverty? When people believe God will provide as an excuse to avoid work, study, innovation, planning, or responsibility, they step outside the laws that bring provision. They shut themselves out from the very streams through which abundance flows. The Grail Message teaches that God provides through the laws, not outside them. He provides seed, not bread. He provides talent, not finished success. He provides direction, not bypassing of effort. Thus provision exists, but man must walk toward it. Chapter 13. The fatal belief in luck, chance, or destiny. Another spiritual poison. The idea that wealth or poverty is a matter of chance, luck, destiny, fate, random favor, being lucky. This belief is a direct denial of the perfect, incorruptible justice of creation. The universe has no randomness. Every occurrence in your financial life, every rise, fall, stagnation, or advancement, is the result of your inner radiations, your volition, your habits, your preceding sowing, your alignment with or deviation from the spiritual laws. There is no luck in creation. There is no coincidence. There is no arbitrary destiny. What people call luck is usually the harvest of past sowing, the outcome of inner clarity, the product of preparation meeting opportunity, or the result of radiational openness to inspiration. What people call bad luck is often the fruit of indolence, fear, lack of discipline, wrong inner attitudes, or radiational dissonance. Why believing in luck keeps people poor? When you believe in luck, you do not take responsibility. You do not study the laws. You do not improve your abilities. You do not examine your radiations. You wait for life instead of shaping it. You hand over your destiny to imaginary forces instead of the real spiritual laws governing everything. This gives rise to gambling, shortcuts, magical thinking, financial recklessness, greed-driven ventures, and impatience, all of which lead to repeated poverty. The Grail clarity. The Grail Message makes it unmistakably clear. The human spirit shapes its path through the laws that respond unfailingly to its volition. There is no luck. There is only law. When man knows this, he stops waiting and begins creating. He stops blaming and begins understanding. He stops hoping for chance and begins sowing for certainty. Chapter 14. The fear of wealth and guilt of prosperity. Humanity has long carried a deep, often unconscious fear of wealth. This fear is not rooted in the nature of wealth itself, but in misunderstanding and misalignment with spiritual laws. Many have been taught that material abundance is sinful, that to prosper is to betray humility or spiritual purity. This fear manifests as guilt the moment one achieves financial success, creating an inner tension that repels prosperity rather than attracting it. The Grail Message illuminates this error. Wealth, in itself, is neutral. It is a force, a potential, which can serve the spirit if aligned with uprightness, clarity, and purpose. The guilt, fear, or self-condemnation that humans attach to material prosperity distorts their radiational alignment, blocks the flow of abundance, and ultimately keeps them in lack. To break this cycle, one must first confront the false associations between morality and material success, understanding that true uprightness is expressed not by renouncing wealth, but by handling it justly, wisely, and with awareness of the spiritual laws. Chapter 15. The Comfort Zone, the Subtle Prison of the Spirit. Many individuals remain poor not due to lack of opportunity but because of a self-imposed limitation, the comfort zone. This state is deceptively safe, offering a predictable rhythm of scarcity that feels familiar. The Grail Message teaches that spiritual and material growth require movement, initiative, and the willingness to act in accordance with the laws of creation. The comfort zone fosters fear of effort, innovation, and risk, binding the spirit to stagnation. Inner radiations weaken, vitality diminishes, and the individual becomes a passive receptor of circumstance rather than an active co-creator. Escaping this prison is not merely a matter of motivation, it is a process of aligning with the spiritual currents that govern material reality. By cultivating courage, initiative, and clarity of purpose, one awakens the latent forces within, enabling wealth and abundance to flow naturally as a reflection of spiritual uprightness rather than a fleeting emotional desire. Part 4. The Inner Spiritual Roots of Financial Lack. Chapter 16. Indolence, the Silent Destroyer of Destiny. Indolence is not merely physical laziness, it is a subtle spiritual force that undermines the soul's potential and blocks the flow of abundance. The Grail Message reveals that every human is entrusted with capacities and talents which are meant to serve both their individual development and the greater whole. When indolence takes root, these capacities lie dormant, and the human being becomes a passive participant in life, expecting prosperity without effort or alignment with the laws of creation. Indolence distorts inner radiations, dulling initiative, weakening discernment, and attracting stagnation. Spiritually, it creates a vacuum, a space where negative currents and disorder can easily enter, reinforcing cycles of lack. True mastery over indolence begins with awareness, recognizing moments of avoidance, procrastination, and self-indulgence. Through disciplined action, clarity of purpose, and alignment with divine laws, the soul awakens, reactivates its inherent potentials, and draws abundance naturally. Indolence, left unchecked, does not only hinder material prosperity, it suppresses the spirit's upward movement and diminishes the capacity to fulfill one's true mission on earth. Chapter 17. Weak Willpower and Its Consequences. The Grail Message teaches that the human will is the instrument through which the spirit manifests in the physical world. A weak or indecisive will, however, opens the door to disorder and lack. Those who vacillate, defer action, or allow external circumstances to dictate their choices weaken their radiational influence, attracting instability and scarcity. Weak willpower does not merely prevent the achievement of goals, it disturbs the harmony of the soul itself. Every human thought, desire, and action carries radiational weight. When the will is feeble, these radiations are scattered, attracting confusion, delays, and even loss. Strengthening the will requires conscious attention, decisive action, and alignment with spiritual truth. Only a resolute and upright will can direct energies toward creation rather than waste them in indecision or passivity. In the realm of material and financial abundance, weak willpower manifests as procrastination, dependence, or ineffective effort, ensuring that potential wealth is never fully realized. Chapter 18. Misuse of Thinking Power and Imagination. The imagination and the faculty of thought are not mere mental tools, they are spiritual instruments. When misused, they can become traps that reinforce poverty. Human beings often dwell on lack, fear, or envy, unconsciously radiating these patterns into their own lives. Worry, daydreams of impossible gain, or scheming driven by selfishness distort the natural flow of creative energy. The Grail Message clarifies that pure, focused thought aligned with the laws of creation attracts abundance, while scattered, egocentric, or negative thinking draws resistance and lack. Imagination must be disciplined, serving constructive aims rather than reinforcing illusions of scarcity. A mind attuned to truth, clarity, and purpose generates radiations that harmonize with material and spiritual prosperity, establishing a magnetism of positive outcomes. Misused thinking power, conversely, becomes a self-imposed prison, binding the soul to limitation and disorder. Chapter 19. Wrong Motives and Their Magnetic Effects. All human actions are governed by motives, and the Grail Message shows that these motives radiate far beyond the immediate sphere of action. Actions motivated by greed, pride, envy, or the desire to dominate create discordant radiations that repel abundance. The human soul is not served by superficial cleverness or manipulative strategies, rather, prosperity flows from upright intentions, service, and harmonization with the laws of creation. Wrong motives distort the spiritual currents, attracting obstacles, competition, and setbacks. Conversely, motives aligned with justice, service, and constructive growth generate radiational currents that attract prosperity naturally. The spirit's magnetic field is delicate, yet potent. It amplifies or diminishes material outcomes according to the purity and alignment of inner intentions. Understanding and correcting motives is therefore essential, not just for financial prosperity, but for the integrity and evolution of the soul itself. Chapter 20. How Fear and Doubt Create Radiational Blockage. Fear and doubt are not merely psychological states, they are powerful radiational forces that influence the soul and its material circumstances. The Grail Message teaches that the human spirit radiates continuously, and these radiations attract corresponding energies. When fear dominates thought, the soul's radiations contract, closing channels that allow prosperity, opportunity, and clarity to flow. Doubt, similarly, weakens the will and distorts the alignment of thought with truth, preventing the manifestation of spiritual and material potential. Those who habitually entertain fear, whether of failure, poverty, or judgment, build invisible barriers that repel success and abundance. Their inner world becomes a mirror of their apprehensions, stagnation, setbacks, and repeated lack. Doubt compounds this effect, undermining decision-making and prompting indecisive action. The result is a self-perpetuating cycle. Fear blocks radiational currents, scarcity manifests, scarcity reinforces fear, and the soul remains trapped. The Grail Message clarifies the path out of this state. Fear and doubt must be recognized, understood, and consciously released through alignment with spiritual truth. By cultivating trust in the laws of creation and in one's own radiational potential, the human being can restore the free flow of energy. Courage, clarity, and decisive action, rooted in the awareness of divine order, dissolve radiational blockages, allowing prosperity, opportunity, and abundance to be attracted naturally. True liberation from financial lack begins not with external strategies alone but with the mastery of inner radiations, the soul's vibration of certainty, faith, and uprightness. Part 5. Poverty is a consequence of radiational disorder. Chapter 21. Inner distortion and its outward manifestation. Poverty, in the spiritual sense, is never solely an external condition. It arises from inner distortions, misalignments of thought, feeling, and will that disturb the soul's radiations. When a person harbors negativity, fear, or resentment, their inner light becomes clouded, and this dissonance manifests in the material realm as scarcity. Opportunities remain unnoticed, talents go untapped, and energy is dissipated in ineffective effort. The Grail Message teaches that the outer world is a reflection of the soul's inner state. Financial lack is often the visible consequence of inner chaos. True abundance begins with restoring alignment, cultivating purity of thought, clarity of purpose, and upright radiations. By consciously correcting internal distortions, one establishes a coherent radiational field that attracts harmonious conditions. Prosperity flows not as a reward, but as a natural result of spiritual order within. Chapter 22. The role of envy, jealousy, and comparison. Envy, jealousy, and the compulsion to compare oneself to others are powerful radiational toxins. Each moment of coveting another's success or possessions generates a magnetic pull toward lack, drawing the soul into disharmony with its own potential. This misalignment weakens the capacity to create, blocks energy channels, and attracts obstacles that mirror internal discontent. The Grail Message emphasizes that liberation from these forces requires inward turning, cultivating contentment, gratitude, and acknowledgement of one's unique path. When the soul radiates acceptance and joy, it no longer resonates with scarcity but attracts abundance naturally, without struggle or resentment. True wealth arises when the inner field is free from comparison and the spirit remains anchored in truth. Chapter 23. Laziness of the spirit versus laziness of the body. Many believe that poverty is simply the consequence of physical inactivity or lack of labor. While the body's effort is a necessary component in the material realm, the Grail Message reveals a deeper truth. The true source of financial lack often lies in the laziness of the spirit. The spirit, when inert, unmotivated, or disinterested in growth and upright action, radiates stagnation. This inner inertia attracts external conditions of lack, regardless of physical activity. Laziness of the spirit manifests in countless ways: avoidance of responsibility, indecision, neglect of personal development, and failure to cultivate talents. A person may labor tirelessly with their body yet achieve little because their inner radiational field is blocked by lethargy, doubt, or disconnection from purpose. The soul's energy governs the flow of circumstances. Without alignment and vigilance, the outer life mirrors the inner dormancy. In contrast, the Grail Message emphasizes that disciplined, upright spiritual activity, focused thought, clarity of intention, self-reflection, and conscious alignment with the laws of creation activates the forces that generate material abundance. True diligence begins within. A vigilant spirit energizes the mind and body, harmonizing radiations and opening the channels for opportunities to manifest. Poverty, therefore, is not merely a physical problem, it is a radiational reflection of spiritual dormancy. To rise, one must awaken the spirit, cultivate inner activity, and allow the harmonious radiations of uprightness to govern all actions. Only then does labor become fruitful, talents bear their natural reward, and material scarcity dissolve. Chapter 24. How wrong associations drag one into poverty. Human beings are profoundly affected by the radiational qualities of those around them. Prolonged association with individuals dominated by fear, greed, or stagnation gradually imposes their vibrations upon the observer. Misaligned radiations, negative attitudes, idleness, or destructive habits act like invisible chains, dragging one away from natural abundance. The Grail Message instructs that careful discernment of associations is a spiritual necessity. Aligning with upright, purposeful, and radiant individuals strengthens one's own field, facilitates growth, and opens channels for prosperity. Conversely, unguarded participation in toxic environments enforces poverty, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of radiational laws. By understanding these dynamics, inner distortion, negative comparison, and harmful associations, the seeker can begin to restore harmony within, laying the foundation for material and spiritual abundance alike. Chapter 25. When the soul closes itself to provision. Financial lack and poverty are not solely the result of external circumstances. At their deepest root, they arise when the soul itself closes to the flow of provision. The Grail Message teaches that every human being is embedded within the laws of creation, where radiational forces govern all life. These forces respond to the state of the soul, to the openness or constriction of one's inner being. When the soul harbors negativity, resistance, pride, or distrust, it contracts. It rejects not only spiritual light but also the practical currents of support and abundance that the universe offers. This inward closure can manifest as self-sabotage, avoidance of opportunity, or an inability to recognize and act upon openings for growth. The soul's contraction repels provision, as a magnet can only attract what is drawn toward it. If the spirit resists, external abundance cannot anchor. Fear, doubt, and lack of faith are common causes. The person who constantly worries, complains, or doubts their ability to receive blocks the radiational pathways of supply. Similarly, one who clings to resentment or envy, or measures life by comparison, seals themselves off from the divine flow. The Grail Message emphasizes that openness, humility, and uprightness are keys. A soul that aligns with truth, radiates gratitude, and actively seeks to harmonize with the laws of creation naturally draws provision into its life. In practical terms, the opening of the soul is expressed through conscious inner work, cultivating trust in the divine order, relinquishing attachment to fear, and purifying intent. As the soul relaxes its grip of resistance, radiations of abundance flow freely, opportunities arise, and material support manifests in ways that often surpass human expectation. Poverty is not merely a lack of resources, it is the reflection of a closed soul. Opening the soul restores alignment with life itself. Chapter 26. Thought forms of lack and their consequences. Poverty often begins in the unseen realms of thought. The Grail Message illuminates that every thought carries radiational weight. When the mind habitually dwells on scarcity, limitation, or failure, it creates thought forms, vibrational blueprints, that shape reality. These are not mere mental habits, they are energetic structures that influence the soul's receptivity and the world around it. A person who constantly fears financial lack, doubts their ability to provide, or complains about circumstances is reinforcing the very conditions they wish to escape. The repeated mental focus on deficiency attracts corresponding external circumstances, not through magic, but through the law of reciprocal action. The soul resonates with what it projects, and the universe mirrors this radiational pattern in material form. Breaking free requires conscious awareness and correction. One must observe these thought forms without judgment and intentionally cultivate mental clarity, gratitude, and constructive imagination. To imagine abundance with a purified, upright intent is to create new radiational pathways that draw provision. The Grail Message stresses, mastery over thought is mastery over life. Poverty is the consequence of thought misaligned with truth and spiritual order. Chapter 27. Materialism, the paradox that leads to poverty. Humanity often confuses material accumulation with security and fulfillment. The pursuit of wealth for its own sake, disconnected from spiritual purpose, becomes a paradoxical force that leads to poverty. The Grail Message reveals that materialism focuses the soul outward, binding it to transient things and external validations. This misalignment weakens the soul's radiational openness, effectively sealing it off from genuine provision. The more a person clings to possessions as a measure of value or self-worth, the more they generate inner tension, fear of loss, and dependency on fleeting circumstances. Wealth is then experienced not as a natural result of upright action and alignment, but as a source of anxiety. This misdirected striving drains the spirit, reducing clarity, creativity, and the capacity to attract life's sustenance. True prosperity flows to those whose material pursuits are guided by spiritual principles. Wealth must be a tool of service, growth, and upright living, not a goal in itself. When possessions are used responsibly and with gratitude, the soul remains open, and provision flows naturally. Materialism, untempered by spiritual consciousness, creates its own cycle of lack. Chapter 28. Emotional spending and internal emptiness. Another pathway to self-created poverty lies in emotional spending. Many seek comfort, pleasure, or distraction through external consumption, attempting to fill an inner void with money, goods, or status. The Grail Message clarifies that material indulgence cannot heal spiritual emptiness, in fact, it amplifies it. Each act of compulsive spending, or expenditure driven by fear, envy, or impulsive desire, carries radiational consequences. Resources are depleted, and the soul's vibrational equilibrium is disturbed. Emotional spending becomes a cycle. The emptiness remains, prompting further consumption, creating a feedback loop that drains both material and spiritual wealth. Breaking this pattern requires the individual to turn inward, confront the sources of inner emptiness, and cultivate self-discipline and radiational balance. Emotional stability, gratitude, and conscious use of resources re-establish alignment with the laws of creation. The Grail Message emphasizes that prosperity is not measured by accumulation alone, but by the soul's ability to harmonize material activity with spiritual principles. Chapter 29. The Poverty Cycle, Ignorance, Error, Consequences. Poverty does not arise suddenly. It is rarely the product of a single event. Rather, it emerges from a subtle, repeating cycle in which ignorance gives birth to error, and error manifests its inevitable consequences. The Grail Message clarifies that nothing in creation happens by accident. Everything follows immutable laws. Poverty, therefore, is not a mysterious misfortune but a radiational result of seeds previously sown, knowingly or unknowingly. Ignorance is the first step, not the innocence of not knowing, but the refusal to seek knowledge. Many drift through life without understanding the laws that govern existence, unaware of the radiational currents that shape their destiny. They cling to false beliefs about wealth, work, success, and spiritual responsibility. They attribute outcomes to luck, fate, or the actions of others, never pausing to examine the inner posture from which their lives unfold. This ignorance darkens the spiritual gaze and disconnects a person from guidance that flows naturally when the spirit is awake. Error follows. When the inner compass is misaligned, decisions become distorted. A person may make impulsive choices, attach themselves to unhealthy relationships, neglect opportunities, or misuse resources. Their actions lack clarity because their thoughts lack illumination. Error here does not mean moral failing alone, it is any deviation from the natural harmony of creation. Every error, mental, emotional, or practical, carries a radiational effect that eventually returns to the sender. Consequences come last, but they are unavoidable. Consequence is not punishment but the precise echo of what the individual has emanated. Poverty, whether material, emotional, or spiritual, is often this echo. It is the harvest of seeds planted long before, seeds of fear, carelessness, lack of discipline, sloth of the spirit, or misdirected striving. Many attempt to break the poverty cycle by addressing only the outer result, seeking money, blaming circumstances, without correcting the inner root. But unless ignorance is replaced by knowledge, and error by alignment with the light, consequences will continue to repeat themselves in new forms. Breaking the cycle requires awakening. It requires recognition that change begins within. through clear perception, truthful self-examination, and a willingness to act differently. The moment a person begins to harmonize their thoughts, words, and actions with the spiritual laws, the cycle shifts. Poverty dissolves not because of chance, but because its inner cause is no longer being fed. Chapter 30. The Spiritual Cost of Wastefulness. Wastefulness is one of the most underestimated pathways to poverty, yet it carries profound spiritual consequences. The Grail Message reveals that everything in creation serves a purpose and is sustained by the law of reciprocal action. When a person wastes resources, time, energy, money, opportunities, they disrupt this natural flow, creating imbalance within themselves and in their environment. Wastefulness springs from inner disorder. It is the outward expression of an inner state that does not recognize value, either of things or of life itself. When one wastes food, money, or material things, it indicates a deeper waste occurring silently within, a wasting of strength, a neglect of responsibility, a refusal to cultivate one's abilities, or a habitual abandonment of opportunities sent by the light. Such behavior closes spiritual channels because it reflects ingratitude, not necessarily spoken, but radiated through careless action. Every resource entrusted to a human being is a test, not a punishment, but an invitation to show maturity, discipline, and gratitude. Wastefulness does the opposite. It demonstrates spiritual immaturity, an inability to perceive blessings, and a disregard for order. The spiritual consequence is that the person is gradually deprived of what they mishandle. Creation does not continue pouring into vessels that leak. In this way, wastefulness attracts poverty, not through superstition, but through spiritual law. Wastefulness also weakens the will. It dulls the spirit. A person who constantly wastes becomes accustomed to disorder, clutter, excess, and emotional impulsiveness. They lose the capacity to plan, preserve, or appreciate. With every act of waste, their radiations dim, and with dim radiations, they lose the ability to attract new provision. Nothing flows smoothly toward a spirit that treats what it receives as disposable. Correction begins not with fear, but with consciousness. One must learn to value what one has, not by hoarding, but by using resources purposefully, respectfully, and with foresight. Where gratitude enters, clarity follows. Where clarity enters, order emerges. And where order emerges, abundance naturally returns. In the Grail-inspired understanding, prosperity is never accidental. It is the rightful outcome of inner harmony. Wastefulness disrupts that harmony, but disciplined, conscious stewardship restores it. When the human spirit aligns with the laws of balance and purposeful use, creation responds with renewed flow. Provision increases not through striving or worry, but through the quiet dignity of one who has learned to honor every gift. Part 7. How to Escape Financial Lack and Poverty. A light-filled, practical path of liberation. Chapter 31. Reordering your inner life according to the laws of creation. Every true transformation begins within. Poverty, whether material, emotional, or spiritual, is not primarily external. It reflects a deeper disharmony within the inner life of a human being. The Grail Message makes clear that the universe is governed by laws, unchangeable, perfect, luminous laws, that reward harmony and penalize deviation. To escape lack, one must bring the inner world into alignment with these laws. Many people struggle because their inner life is chaotic. Thoughts run without discipline, emotions are turbulent, desires are scattered, and their will is asleep. Yet abundance, order, and clarity can only flow where the soul itself is ordered. A disordered inner life produces disordered results. It attracts confusion, waste, stagnation, and repeated cycles of loss. Reordering your inner life means establishing spiritual clarity. Begin by cultivating truthfulness with yourself, seeing your habits, motives, fears, and weaknesses without excuses. Then, bring your daily thinking into consonance with purity, responsibility, and gratitude. Reject thoughts that weaken, lower, or darken your vibration. Let your words and actions reflect integrity and purpose. As you align your thoughts, emotions, and will with the laws of sowing and reaping, attraction, and reciprocal action, your outer life gradually transforms. The soul becomes receptive again. Opportunities open. You perceive possibilities previously hidden because your radiations now vibrate in harmony with provision. This is not theory, it is law. Reorder the inner life, and the outer must follow. Chapter 32. Awakening the Dormant Willpower. One of the greatest tragedies of humanity is the widespread paralysis of the will. Many live only in thoughts and emotions, while the will, meant to govern and direct, lies dormant. A weak will produces a weak life. The Grail Message teaches that the will is the true spiritual core of the human being. It is the engine of destiny, the instrument through which divine laws can manifest in one's life. A dormant will leads to procrastination, dependency, fear, and avoidance of responsibility, all of which are prime seeds of poverty. Without an awakened will, knowledge is useless, inspiration fades, plans remain unexecuted. Poverty grows in the soil of inactivity. Awakening the will begins with small, consistent steps. Choose one constructive action daily, something meaningful, even if small, and complete it. The will strengthens through exercise just as muscles do. Reject excuses. Move even when motivation is low. The more you act, the more power flows into your spirit. Another key to willpower is purity of intent. A will aligned with selfishness, envy, pride, or greed becomes distorted and unstable. But a will connected to truth, service, responsibility, and inner clarity becomes a powerful magnet of provision. The awakened will cuts through confusion. It orders your life. It empowers you to rise above circumstances, resist temptations, and do what is necessary. This spiritual force transforms lack into productivity and stagnation into steady progress. The dormant will is poverty. The awakened will is liberation. Chapter 33. The Discipline of Right Thinking. Right thinking is not merely positive thinking, it is thinking aligned with truth, clarity, and the natural laws of creation. Most people suffer poverty because their thinking is polluted with fear, doubt, comparison, ingratitude, anxiety, and inner contradictions. Such thought forms weaken the spirit and repel provision. Right thinking begins with awareness. Watch your thoughts as an observer. Notice how quickly they turn toward fear or self-limitation. Notice how easily you complain, worry, or expect failure. These patterns must be uprooted, not with force, but with clarity. Replace habitual fear-based thoughts with grounded, luminous perspectives. Instead of, I can't, ask, what is the next right step? Instead of, I lack, say, I am willing, I am learning, I am growing, I am aligning. This is the discipline, consistently directing the mind toward what is true, constructive, noble, and possible. The Grail Message reveals that thoughts are living forms. They do not vanish, they act. They attract similar forms, strengthen their own kind, and return to the sender multiplied. This means every thought is a seed planted in the subtle soil of existence, eventually sprouting into circumstances. To practice right thinking is to sow rightly. To maintain right thinking is to gather light. To persist in right thinking is to reshape your entire radiational field, thus drawing new opportunities, guidance, inspiration, and provision. Right thinking is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is discipline, but it is also liberation. The mind, once purified and ordered, becomes a clear channel for spiritual guidance, creative ideas, and sound decision-making, the foundations of steady prosperity. Chapter 34. From Wishful Hoping to Active Receiving. Many souls drift through life in a fog of hoping. They hope things will change, hope money will come, hope life becomes better, and hope God will intervene. But hope without movement is a spiritual illusion, for in creation, nothing responds to mere wishing. Hope can be beautiful when it warms the soul, but it becomes destructive when it replaces inner action. In the Grail Message, the human spirit is repeatedly reminded, you must move. For movement alone brings connection with the laws that bring fulfillment. The trap of passive expectation. People say, one day I will succeed, but they never sow the seeds required. They imagine receiving, but they neither think, speak, nor act in alignment with that receiving. This creates a radiational mismatch. They crave abundance but radiate inactivity, fear, procrastination, or vague longing. Creation responds truthfully, not to their words or dreams, but to their actual inner vibrational condition. Thus, many who pray for breakthroughs unknowingly block themselves because they do not become the vessel into which abundance can flow. Abundance cannot rest upon emptiness. It rests upon preparedness. The law of active expectation. Active receiving is not struggle. It is not frantic activity. It is a clear inner state where your thoughts, feelings, and actions form a unified magnet for what you desire. It is when your inner world becomes an invitation to what you seek. Passive hope is like sitting at a locked door waiting for someone to open it. Active expectation is rising, walking to the door, and turning the handle. The moment you move, creation moves with you. This is why even a small action in the right direction has enormous power. It sends a signal into the spiritual currents: I am ready. Let it come. And because the laws must respond, opportunities, people, and ideas begin to align around you. Becoming a vessel that can hold wealth. Receiving requires form. A river cannot fill a broken container. Likewise, wealth cannot fill a soul riddled with fear, disorder, indiscipline, resentment, or doubt. You must shape yourself first. Active receivership requires a clarified intention, knowing what you want and why. A disciplined thought life, so your energy is not scattered. Emotional readiness, freedom from fear-based contractions. Practical openness, structures that can actually hold success, skills, responsibility, professionalism. A spirit aligned with light, honesty, gratitude, willingness to serve. These form the cup into which abundance can pour. The sacred shift from wishing to readiness. When you stop hoping vaguely and begin preparing specifically, you announce to the universe, I am no longer dreaming, I am ready. Then the flow begins. Passive hope asks for miracles without transformation. Active receiving becomes the miracle through transformation. This is the shift every seeker of abundance must make. Chapter 35. Breaking Negative Radiational Patterns. Every human being lives in a radiational field shaped by their inner life. Thoughts, emotions, motives, intentions, habits, each emits a vibration. These vibrations build patterns. Patterns repeat, and repeated patterns become conditions. Thus, poverty is rarely a random occurrence. It is often a repeated radiational pattern generated unconsciously. To escape poverty, one must first break the pattern that sustains it. Understanding radiational patterns. A radiational pattern is formed by recurring thoughts, recurring emotional states, repeated decisions, repeated reactions, ingrained beliefs, subconscious expectations, the company one keeps, the motives one carries. These energies weave together into a magnetic field around the individual. This field draws experiences that match it. A person who constantly fears lack will unknowingly attract situations that match that fear. A person who secretly believes, people like me never prosper, will continually sabotage opportunities. A person who envies others emits a vibration of inner emptiness and blocks their own flow. You cannot radiate heaviness and attract light. You cannot radiate doubt and attract supply. You cannot radiate resentment and attract progress. Creation only returns to you the equivalent of what you radiate. The hidden power of emotional repetition. Many people do not realize that their emotional habits shape their material life more than their actions do. For instance, chronic complaining creates heaviness, driving away helpers. Bitterness reduces intuition, causing poor decisions. Anxiety compresses energy, blocking creativity. Self-pity lowers vibration, preventing new beginnings. Pride isolates, cutting off relationships that bring opportunities. These are not sins. They are simply vibrational disturbances that disrupt the natural flow of provision. Breaking the pattern. To break a radiational pattern, you must first become conscious of it. You cannot fight what you cannot see. Here is the Grail-inspired process of transformation. 1. Recognition. Identify your dominant inner states. What do you repeat mentally? What emotion do you return to? What belief shapes your decisions? This is the root of your radiational field. 2. Dissolution. Every negative pattern loses power the moment you refuse to feed it with thought or emotion. It fades like a fire starved of oxygen. Stop rehearsing old wounds. Stop replaying fears. Stop magnifying imagined threats. Stop confessing scarcity. What you no longer energize dissolves. 3. Replacement. Creation does not allow a vacuum. You must replace the old with the new. Replace fear with clarity. Replace doubt with truth. Replace resentment with responsibility. Replace idleness with purposeful movement. Replace envy with gratitude. These new vibrations form a new radiational structure around you. 4. Reinforcement. Consistency is the key. A new pattern must be strengthened through repetition until it becomes your new natural state. Your radiational field must stabilize before your outer life adjusts. The law will respond without delay. Once negativity stops radiating from you, lack stops returning to you. Once confidence, clarity, gratitude, and responsibility begin to radiate outward, opportunities begin to appear, out of nowhere. But they are not from nowhere. They are from the new field you created. Negative patterns are broken not by force, but by light, through recognition, cleansing, and replacement. When you change within, your radiations change. When your radiations change, your world changes. This is law. This is truth. This is liberation. Part 8. The Spiritual Science of Material Abundance. Understanding Wealth the Way Creation Designed It. Chapter 36. Wealth is a Function of Service and Movement. Humanity has for long misunderstood the true nature of wealth. Many imagine abundance as something to be acquired, to be begged for, to be prayed down, or to be wrestled out of life's hands. But wealth, in the structure of creation, is never static. It is a function of movement, and movement is always tied to service. In the Grail Message, it is repeatedly made clear that the entire creation is built on laws of circulation. Nothing is permitted to stagnate. Not water, not air, not thought, not spiritual power, and certainly not money. Everything moves, and in movement lies renewal, increase, and fruitfulness. Thus, wealth comes to a human spirit as a response to what they set in motion through service. Not service as a moral posture, nor as a coerced religious duty, but as a vibrational contribution that enriches the web of life. Service creates movement. Movement creates openings. Openings create inflows. Where there is stagnation, laziness, withholding, indifference, self-centered living, there can be no lasting prosperity. Material abundance is simply the earthly reflection of inner obedience to the laws of circulation. The human being who understands this no longer prays for money without giving movement to service. They no longer wait for opportunities while offering nothing to the world. They no longer seek increase without sowing usefulness. To serve is to activate a law. To activate a law is to unlock a flow. To unlock a flow is to experience prosperity. That is why those who contribute more, through invention, solution, excellence, or upliftment, often possess more. Not because they are favored, but because the law of reciprocal action returns multiplied harvest to every seed of service sown. Wealth is never an accident. It is never luck. It is never a miracle detached from law. It is the natural reward of movement in service, just as heat is the natural result of friction. Therefore, whoever desires abundance must ask, where have I created value? Where have I served? Where have I moved anything forward in creation? For in creation, nothing increases except what serves a purpose. Chapter 37. Talents, Gifts, and Spiritual Endowments. Every human spirit enters Earth existence equipped with certain spiritual tools, seeds of abilities meant to unfold here. These are not randomly assigned. They are precise, purposeful, and deeply linked to the individual's journey and responsibilities. Talents are not decorations. They are instructions. They reveal what path a human spirit must take to fulfill its earthly mission. When a person suppresses their gift, imitates another, or follows a path misaligned with their inner structure, they step out of their natural orbit of provision. Poverty or struggle often follows, not as punishment, but as a signal that they have stepped out of the radiational current destined for them. Every gift radiates a particular energy. Every energy attracts a particular kind of opportunity. Every opportunity carries a particular kind of provision. When the gift is used, it brightens. When it brightens, it attracts. When it attracts, it provides. Thus, talents are spiritual magnets. They draw to themselves the material conditions that match their vibrational quality. This is why a singer, when aligned, finds doors naturally open in music. Why a teacher finds fulfillment and provision in impacting lives. Why a builder thrives by constructing. Why an organizer prospers by coordinating. But a singer who forces themselves into commerce without love for it will struggle. A gifted teacher pretending to be an engineer will feel drained. A natural leader shrinking in fear will starve the spirit. Your endowment is your inner compass. Follow it, and you step into your ordained flow. Neglect it, and you exile yourself from your spiritual supply line. The Grail laws do not support a life of imitation or pretense. They support only that which springs from the authentic core of the spirit. Those who prosper greatly on earth are not those with the biggest talents, but those who use their talents with courage, commitment, and purity of purpose. To understand one's gifts is to understand one's spiritual identity. To use one's gifts is to honor the Creator. To refine one's gifts is to evolve the spirit. And abundance flows naturally to such a one. Chapter 38. The right way to use money in accordance with light. Money is a tool, not a master, not a god, not a symbol of holiness or unholiness. It is a neutral earthly energy, and like all energies in creation, it intensifies whatever radiational quality flows through the one who uses it. In the hands of a pure soul, money becomes a force for upliftment. In the hands of a darkened soul, it becomes a weapon for destruction. Money obeys the inner nature of its holder. The Grail laws make this clear. Everything that flows through a human being takes on their radiational color. Money is no exception. The right use of money follows three spiritual principles. 1. Money must remain in movement. Just as water must flow to remain pure, money must circulate to remain fruitful. Hoarding, fearful withholding, or obsessive accumulation leads to inner stagnation and eventually outer loss. Movement attracts more movement. 2. Money must serve a purpose. Purpose gives money its radiational clarity. When money is used wastefully, showfully, aimlessly, or indulgently, it loses its light attunement and begins to attract misfortune. But when used for growth, upliftment, lawful enjoyment, and rightful exchange, it multiplies gracefully. 3. Money must be used responsibly in alignment with the light. This means no bribery, no oppression, no exploitation, no deceit, no manipulation, no gambling of destiny, no corruption of conscience. For money gained or spent in darkness carries within it seeds of decay. It returns in the form of loss, shame, sudden collapse, or karmic debts that stretch across lifetimes. The right use of money uplifts the owner and all who encounter its flow. It supports what is noble, constructive, and pure. It strengthens the spirit rather than weighing it down. A person aligned with the laws of light uses money to build, not destroy. To heal, not wound. To uplift, not enslave. To encourage growth, not vanity. When money is handled with reverence, gratitude, clarity, and discipline, it becomes a blessing, a servant, a tool of light, and a multiplier of good. This is the spiritual science of abundance. Purity in purpose, clarity in service, courage in using one's gifts, and responsibility in handling earthly tools. Where these exist, poverty cannot remain. Where these are absent, wealth cannot stay. Chapter 39. The connection between creativity and prosperity. Creativity is not merely the ability to invent, design, or produce something appealing. It is a spiritual force, an inner radiational process through which the human spirit participates in the ongoing movement of creation. Wherever genuine creativity is, there is life. Wherever life flows actively, abundance follows naturally. Prosperity is therefore not a coincidence, it is a consequence of radiational activity that aligns with the will of the light. Humanity has long misunderstood wealth, imagining it as something to be chased, manipulated, or stolen. But wealth does not originate from external scheming. It begins within, in the luminous centers of inspiration that touch the human spirit when it is awake, humble, receptive, and striving. Every true invention, meaningful service, or profitable enterprise springs first from an inner stirring, an idea, an impulse, an image, which is then brought down into purposeful action on the material plane. This inner stirring is a sign that a human being is connected to the creative power flowing from above. When a person uses this impulse constructively, new pathways open, new resources gather, and new doors unlock. Creation supports every movement that contributes to its unfolding. But when the inner stirring is resisted, suppressed, or ignored, stagnation sets in, and stagnation eventually produces lack. Prosperity is therefore a radiational outcome. It arises when the human spirit becomes a vessel through which higher light impulses can enter earthly activity. An artist, teacher, craftsman, farmer, engineer, or entrepreneur, all prosper when their inner creativity expresses itself with sincerity, diligence, and purity of intent. The tragedy of modern humanity is that many people suffocate their creativity. Some do it through fear, others through comparison, still others through laziness of the spirit. Many bury their talents in the soil of self-doubt, and yet they pray for blessings, unaware that they block the very channel through which blessings would flow. True creativity is obedient to the laws of movement, sowing, reciprocity, and spiritual radiation. It requires discipline, purity, responsibility, and joy. When these conditions are present, prosperity becomes unavoidable, not because one is seeking riches, but because one is actively participating in the movements of the light. Thus, prosperity is not pursued, it is allowed. Creativity is the gate through which it enters. Chapter 40. Diligence, the ignored gateway to material blessings. In every spiritual tradition, diligence is honored as a virtue. Yet in daily life, it has become one of the most neglected spiritual laws. Many pray for abundance but refuse the discipline that makes it possible. Many desire success but reject the processes through which success is born. They want harvest without sowing, results without effort, and blessings without alignment. But creation is incorruptible. It cannot be bribed by words, emotions, or wishes. Diligence is the human spirit's active participation in the will of the light. It is the inward readiness to work, to persevere, to organize, to refine, to improve, and to remain faithful to a task until completion. Where diligence is missing, poverty follows, not as punishment, but as consequence. Laziness invites decay, neglect invites disorder, half-heartedness invites failure. The universe responds precisely to the radiations one gives out. Diligence, however, is more than hard work. Many work endlessly yet remain poor because their activity is not aligned with their inner calling. True diligence is the harmonious cooperation of will, thought, and action. It is work done with clarity, purpose, joy, and consistency. It is the refusal to drift aimlessly, procrastinate, or leave tasks suspended. It is the steady effort that builds mastery, trustworthiness, and competence. Material blessings gather around those whose diligence produces reliability. Employers seek them, customers return to them, opportunities gravitate toward them. The laws of creation draw abundance into the orbit of the diligent because diligence itself produces order, and the light can only bless what is ordered. A diligent person rises when others sleep, shows up when others hesitate, completes tasks others avoid, and maintains excellence when others settle for average. This steadfastness forms a spiritual magnetism that attracts provision, favor, and open doors. But diligence must not be confused with stress, busyness, or unstructured labor. True diligence operates with calm awareness and spiritual attunement. It listens, it observes, it plans, it executes with rhythm. It does not rush and does not drag. It moves in harmony with the quiet voice within and the unfolding events outside. In the Grail Message, it is taught that the spirit must be awake, alive to its responsibilities, active in its environment, and joyfully participating in the creative movements of existence. Diligence is the earthly expression of this spiritual awakening. When cultivated, it transforms one's radiations, breaks cycles of lack, and attracts opportunities that align with the light. Poverty often hides where diligence is absent. Wealth often rests where diligence is alive. And still, countless people pray for breakthroughs while ignoring this simple key. Yet the spiritual law stands. Diligence is the gateway to blessings. Whoever ignores it forfeits the harvest ordained for them. Part 9. The purified human being in material provision. Becoming a conduit of blessing, not a magnet of lack. Chapter 41. The spiritually awake person and material ease. A human being who has awakened spiritually does not struggle with life in the same way others do. He may still work, strive, and face challenges, but he does not strain inwardly. He does not move in confusion, fear, or disorder. Instead, his steps align with the natural laws, and because of this alignment, his life begins to unfold with a rhythm that brings clarity, provision, and peace. Material ease is not a reward for piety, it is the inevitable byproduct of inner order. When your inner life is arranged according to the will of the Creator, truthfulness, purity, courage, diligence, clarity, and love for right activity, then your outward life begins to reflect the same order. Disorder, lack, and stagnation dissolve naturally because their roots no longer find fertile ground within you. The spiritually awake person sees opportunities where others see obstacles because he is no longer blinded by fear or clogged by anxiety. His radiations flow freely, unhindered by doubt or wrong desires. These clear radiations attract the right forms, connections, and blessings, just as a clean mirror reflects light accurately, while a dusty one distorts it. This ease does not mean a life without effort. Rather, it is a life where effort produces results, where seeds bear fruit, and where pathways open because the inner atmosphere is in harmony with the laws that govern growth and expansion. Such a person becomes a vessel through which blessing can flow to others, because nothing within him obstructs the movement of light. Chapter 42, How Clarity Attracts Opportunities. Clarity is a spiritual power. It is not merely mental sharpness or intellectual understanding, it is a state of inner purity where a person sees things as they truly are, without distortion, fear, pride, or prejudice. Most people repel opportunities not because opportunities do not exist, but because their inner world is cloudy. Confusion, conflicting desires, unresolved guilt, hidden motives, and emotional turbulence create a fog around them. In this fog, even when a door opens right in front of them, they cannot perceive it. Clarity removes this fog. When a person becomes inwardly clear about what he wants, why he wants it, and whether it aligns with the will of the Creator, his radiations become focused and strong. These radiations function like a spiritual magnet, attracting corresponding opportunities, people, and conditions. What many call good luck is nothing more than clarity combined with readiness. Clarity also sharpens intuition. It allows you to detect false paths, deceptive offers, or tempting shortcuts that would lead to downfall. It helps you recognize the right moment to act, the right person to trust, and the right project to begin. You no longer guess, you know. When you stand in clarity, confusion dissolves. Wrong associations fall away. Your decisions gain power. Your steps carry weight. Your presence commands respect. Your words attract the right listeners. Your ideas draw support. Clarity is light, and wherever light shines, life awakens, opportunities emerge, and pathways form. Chapter 43, The Power of Upright Work and Honest Effort. Human beings underestimate the profound spiritual force that flows through upright work. Honest effort is not just physical or intellectual exertion, it is a radiational activity that harmonizes the human spirit with the laws of motion in creation. Where there is upright work, the spirit becomes vibrant. Laziness, procrastination, and half-hearted effort weaken the soul, dim the radiations, and attract stagnation. But diligent, sincere work increases the vibrational strength of a person, making him a powerful attractor of abundance. Work is not a punishment, it is a channel through which the spirit expresses itself. Every sincere effort produces currents in the fine material realms that gather forms and conditions which eventually appear as opportunities, resources, and results in the physical world. This is why dishonest gain, manipulation, shortcuts, and exploitation never produce lasting wealth. They distort the radiations and create dissonance that eventually collapses, often in painful ways. But honest effort builds, first inwardly, then outwardly. The one who works uprightly strengthens his will, purifies his motives, sharpens his intuition, deepens his inner peace, creates a foundation for enduring prosperity. Such a person does not fear challenges. He engages them courageously because he knows that effort anchored in truth connects him with higher help. The laws of creation respond to true work, not empty wishes. They respond to effort, not excuses. They respond to faithfulness, not cunning. Upright work is a prayer in motion. It speaks a silent language that creation understands and rewards. Chapter 44. Gratitude, the magnetic key to sustained increase. Gratitude is not merely an emotional reaction to pleasant circumstances, it is a spiritual law, a radiant force, a magnetic current that aligns a human being with the upward striving streams of creation. Within the Grail Message, we learn that everything in creation responds to the inner nature of human radiations. Gratitude is one of the purest radiations a human soul can emit, for it arises from recognition of the blessings already received, recognition of the order and wisdom woven into life, recognition of the continuous help extended to the human being from the spiritual realm. A grateful person sees, and because he sees, he receives more. A thankless person is blind, and because he is blind, nothing more can flow to him without first destroying him. In the structure of creation, gratitude opens. Ingratitude blocks. Gratitude opens pathways. It invites continuation. It strengthens bridges. It multiplies seed. It aligns the inner human being with the currents of giving and receiving that permeate creation. Where gratitude is absent, stagnation sets in. Doors close. Helpers withdraw. Inspiration withers. This is not punishment, it is resonance. For every blessing carries within it a pulse that seeks acknowledgement. When this acknowledgement rises from the human spirit, it creates a completed circuit, allowing energy to flow back to the giver and forward to the receiver. Gratitude therefore completes the cycle of grace. True gratitude is not sentimental. It is not mere words. It is not the forced politeness of social habit. True gratitude is a living, luminous vibration that radiates outward and forms a bridge between man and higher help. It transforms the human being internally, softening arrogance, dissolving complaint, dispelling fear. A grateful soul cannot harbor bitterness, envy, or self-pity. These are incompatible vibrations. One who lives in gratitude sees opportunities where others see burdens. He sees blessings in small beginnings. He sees lessons in challenges. He sees guidance in delays. And because he sees, he blossoms. The ungrateful spirit, however, darkens his own path. He focuses on what is missing, and in doing so, he summons radiations of lack. His complaints erect walls around him. His constant dissatisfaction repels help. He unknowingly pushes away what he desires, because within creation, what is not valued cannot stay. Therefore, gratitude is not optional for a life of sustained material ease. It is a law. It is the key that maintains the flow once abundance begins. Wealth without gratitude becomes a curse. Wealth with gratitude becomes a channel of blessing. To live in gratitude is to constantly affirm the light. It is to acknowledge God's justice, God's guidance, and God's provision in every circumstance. Such a person attracts more, not by effort, not by struggle, but by resonance. Where gratitude lives, lack cannot survive. Where gratitude breathes, expansion follows. Where gratitude flows, abundance remains. Chapter 45. Living above need, the state of inner richness. To live above need does not mean possessing excessive material wealth. It does not mean the accumulation of luxuries or the pursuit of status symbols. Living above need is first and foremost an inner state, a spiritual posture born of clarity, trust, alignment, and upright activity. A human being begins to live above need when he no longer approaches life from a place of anxiety, desperation, or dependence. Need binds. Need darkens. Need restricts vision. The spiritually immature human being lives constantly in need, even when his bank account is full, because his soul is restless, unclear, and disconnected from the laws that govern provision. The purified human being, however, rises above need because he is rooted in the certainty that creation is unfailingly just. He knows that as long as he works uprightly, thinks purely, gives honestly, and stays alert to guidance, what he requires will meet him at the right time and in the right measure. This certainty does not make him passive, rather, it strengthens his will, sharpens his sense of responsibility, and makes him diligent and joyful in his work. Living above need means you are guided, not driven. You are purposeful, not desperate. You receive naturally, not anxiously. You are stable, not shaken by fluctuations. You create value from inner richness, not from inner emptiness. Inner richness flows from the spirit. It arises when a person aligns himself with truth, simplicity, humility, and service. Such a person becomes a fountain, not a bucket begging to be filled. A fountain is always supplied from a deeper source. It does not depend on external conditions. Even in adversity, it flows. The one who lives above need carries within himself a luminosity that naturally draws provision. Why? Because he is not blocking the currents with fear, greed, doubt, or envy. His radiations are calm, clear, upright, and constructive. These radiations attract helpers, ideas, opportunities, and people. They open paths. The human being who lives above need does not hoard. He does not panic over temporary shortages. He does not define his identity by possessions. Instead, he stands firmly in the knowledge that as long as he aligns with the light, his path will never run dry. This spiritual maturity transforms his external life. He becomes efficient, decisive, and productive. He wastes nothing. Not time, not money, not energy. He understands seasons, he honors processes, and he respects the value of every resource entrusted to him. Because he lives from abundance within, he does not chase illusions without. And eventually, he begins to notice something profound. Life responds to inner richness with outer richness. Material ease becomes a reflection, not the goal. Provision becomes a companion, not an obsession. Blessings become natural, not forced. To live above need is the true freedom intended for the human spirit. It is the destiny of every human being who purifies himself, awakens, and returns to the original harmony designed for him in creation. Part 10. The Future of Humanity and the End of Poverty. A prophetic insight into the coming purification. Chapter 46. Why poverty will be swept away in the new order. Humanity stands at the threshold of a great transition, a purification that will uproot every form of distortion that has long burdened the earth. Poverty, though widely treated as an economic condition, is in truth a spiritual disorder. It is the outward manifestation of inner misalignment with the immutable laws of creation. Where there is harmony, there is fruitfulness. Where there is disharmony, there must be deficiency. The coming new order will not merely wipe away poverty by improving external systems. It will dissolve poverty because the inner conditions that allow poverty to exist will no longer be tolerated. The laws will intensify in their operation, radiations will become more penetrating. What is weak, lazy, distorted, or untrue will no longer be able to survive under the heightened light. In the new order, only that which is pure, honest, willing, diligent, and uplifted will flourish. Poverty will vanish not because wealth is redistributed, but because the human spirit will stand upright again, aligned with the will of God. Such a human being naturally attracts provision, opportunities, ideas, and cooperation. Light cannot flow into a vessel that is closed, impure, fearful, envious, or idle. But when the vessel is clean, straight, warm, and grateful, abundance streams toward it effortlessly. In the future, millions will live in this natural flow. Thus poverty will end because its spiritual soil will be burned away, and only healthy spiritual conditions will remain. Chapter 47. The Judgment on Idleness, Greed, and Exploitation. The purification is not punishment, but consequence. Every human sowing returns to its sower with multiplied force. This is the meaning of judgment. It is the automatic effect of the heightened light upon human radiations. Idleness, long treated lightly by humanity, will be revealed as one of the gravest spiritual sins. For idleness opposes the very nature of creation, which is movement, development, service, and productivity. In the coming time, the idle spirit will feel unbearable inner pressure, heaviness, confusion, and loss. Their accumulated stagnation will break apart, forcing them either to awaken or to collapse under the weight of their own works. Greed, which hoards instead of serves, blocks the flow of blessings and attracts darkness. In the new order, greed will attract rapid decay, loss of wealth, loss of trust, loss of opportunities. What is not shared in the right way will be taken away by the laws themselves. Exploitation, the twisted practice of using others' labor or vulnerability for personal gain, will be the quickest to receive judgment. In the intensified light, motives become visible. Deception will no longer hide. Manipulation will no longer succeed. Oppressive systems will collapse from within, because they contradict the law of justice. In the future, Wealth will only remain in the hands of those whose hearts are clean, generous, truthful, and ready to serve. The dishonest will lose their grip on power. The exploiters will be exposed. The idle will be swept aside by the movement of creation, which tolerates no stagnation. The coming judgment is the great cleansing that restores order and balance. Chapter 48. The Rise of Spiritually Mature Workers. After the cleansing comes renewal. Humanity will not be left in emptiness. Instead, a new foundation will be laid, built by those whose spirits have awakened. The future belongs to spiritually mature workers, individuals who recognize work as worship, service, and cooperation with the laws. They understand that every action radiates, attracts, and builds. Such workers carry joy within their labor, and their productivity is natural, effortless, fruitful. These workers will possess certain characteristics. 1. Clear intuition and enlightened thinking. They will no longer be driven by confusion or animal instinct. Their decisions arise from clarity, inner knowing, and connection with the light. 2. Strong, disciplined willpower. Their wills no longer waver. What they begin, they complete. What they envision, they manifest. 3. Honesty and moral strength. Purity becomes their shield. They attract trust, partnership, and opportunities because they radiate reliability and uprightness. 4. Creativity and joyful industry. They build new systems, invent better structures, and bring solutions inspired from higher realms. Their work is infused with life. 5. True service. They labor not for fame or greed, but because the spirit must work to remain healthy. And creation rewards such service with abundance. These workers will become the pillars of the new order. Nations will prosper because of them. Families will thrive, communities will flourish. Poverty will be impossible wherever such spirits dwell. The rise of spiritually mature workers marks the dawn of a world where abundance is not achieved through force, exploitation, or chance, but through harmony with the eternal laws of God. Chapter 49. The New Economy of Light and Justice. Humanity stands at the threshold of a great transformation, one that will sweep away the old structures built on cunning, exploitation, and spiritual ignorance. In the coming era, an era already forming in the radiations, the entire concept of economy will be purified and rebuilt upon the unchanging laws of the Creator. This new order is not a man-made revolution, nor a political agenda, nor a social experiment. It is the natural consequence of the powerful light pressing down upon the earth, exposing everything hidden and forcing each seed to bear its true fruit. In this new economy, justice will no longer be a dream but a self-evident reality, for the laws will assert themselves without hindrance. No one will be able to gather wealth through manipulation, deceit, bribery, or oppression. The very radiations of such actions will immediately recoil upon the perpetrator, breaking their enterprises and collapsing their influence. Structures built on falsehood will evaporate like mist under a rising sun, because they cannot endure in an atmosphere where clarity reigns. The new economy is not an economy of equal distribution in a political sense, for equality is not a spiritual law. Rather, it is an economy where each person receives the exact harvest of their inner radiations, their diligence, their purity, their honesty, and their contribution to life. In the old era, a lazy man could become wealthy through corruption, while a diligent man could remain poor because his environment was dominated by disorder. But in the era now emerging, such contradictions will no longer be possible. Every human being will stand directly beneath the law of reciprocal action without any shelter of social manipulation. Wealth in the new order will be tied inseparably to service. The greater your contribution to uplifting humanity, through work, innovation, sincerity, clarity, or creativity, the greater your material ease. Wealth will no longer be the playground of the cunning but the crown of the upright. This new economy will also transform the meaning of business. No enterprise will be able to survive unless it contributes genuine value, respects human dignity, and flows in harmony with the universal laws. Companies that exploit workers, sell deceptive products, or operate on greed-driven strategies will simply collapse, not through human protest, but through spiritual consequences that will strike at their core. The coming economy of light will be built upon truth as the foundation, service as the currency, justice as the regulator, purity of motive as the gateway to prosperity. Work is the noble expression of the spirit. Responsibility is the anchor of all transactions. This will be a world where the spiritually awake thrive naturally, for they will align themselves with creation's flow. And those who resist the light, through dishonesty, laziness, mockery of spiritual truths, materialism, or selfish ambition, will inevitably fall away, having no place in the new order. A new economy is rising, a radiational economy, a spiritual economy, an economy of light, and poverty, as humanity knows it, will have no place within it. Chapter 50. Humanity relearning the sacred purpose of material wealth. In the purified future, humanity will no longer see material wealth as an end in itself. The distorted view of money as a personal trophy or a measure of superiority will dissolve completely. Instead, men and women will rediscover the ancient truth that was once known by the purest among past generations, that wealth is a trust, a sacred responsibility entrusted to the individual by the Creator to serve His will in earthly creation. Money is not evil, nor is it holy. It is a tool, neutral, obedient, and responsive to the radiations of its holder. It magnifies the inner state of the one who wields it. In the hands of the greedy, it becomes poison. In the hands of the pure, it becomes nourishment. In the future world, humans will finally understand this law and use money in accordance with light. Humanity will relearn that the purpose of material wealth is threefold. To support the fulfillment of one's earthly tasks. Each person incarnates with specific abilities, missions, and tasks designed to contribute to the harmony of creation. Wealth will no longer be seen as a personal treasure but as provision to carry out one's mission effectively and joyfully. Whether it is a farmer, a builder, an artist, a teacher, or an inventor, each will use their resources to manifest the gifts entrusted to them. To uplift others through service, knowledge, and opportunity. In the new order, generosity will not be forced or demanded. It will flow naturally from awakened souls whose inner abundance overflows into tangible acts of support. Giving will not weaken the giver, it will strengthen them, for all giving aligned with truth returns multiplied through the radiational laws. To maintain and beautify creation. Mankind will understand that the earth is not a marketplace but a living field entrusted to their stewardship. Resources will be used to enhance life, restore the environment, build structures of value, and advance the spiritual and material well-being of all. The misuse of wealth, hoarding, greed, exploitation, vanity, will be seen as spiritual perversion, for it contradicts the movement of creation. In the new era, such misalignment will immediately result in loss, confusion, and stagnation, for the laws will act instantly. The individual who clings to wealth will lose it, the one who fears lack will attract it. The one who uses wealth selfishly will be cut off from the radiational streams of provision. Humanity will discover that true prosperity is an inner state first, a spiritual vibration that aligns with the will of the Creator. Material blessings then follow naturally, like a shadow following a body. The future will reveal that wealth is sacred only when it lifts burdens, supports missions, builds truth, promotes justice, enhances life, expresses gratitude. The new human being will handle wealth with reverence, not fear, with responsibility, not attachment. And because of this purified approach, lack and suffering will gradually disappear from the earth, not by human legislation or redistribution, but by the natural operation of the spiritual laws. When humanity finally understands the sacred purpose of material wealth, poverty will become nothing more than a historical memory, evidence of an age where people lived in ignorance of the light that surrounded them. Conclusion. Returning to the will of the Creator. A final call to clarity, responsibility, and spiritual maturity. The journey through this book has been a journey back into the laws that govern human existence, laws that many have forgotten, ignored, or distorted in the fog of materialism, fear, religious misinterpretations, and spiritual indolence. Poverty has long been treated as a mystery, a punishment, or a random misfortune. Yet throughout the structure of creation, poverty is nothing more than the exact harvest of the seeds human spirits have sown, whether through ignorance, laziness, wrong motives, fear, radiational misalignment, or violation of the natural order. The Creator's will is crystal clear. Movement, service, clarity, diligence, uprightness, and gratitude open gates of abundance. Where these are lacking, lack itself arises. The solution to poverty is therefore not merely economic, it is spiritual, for the roots lie deep in the soul. A distorted inner life cannot produce order in outward circumstances. A fearful spirit cannot receive. A lazy will cannot create. A confused mind cannot attract opportunities. A pride-filled heart cannot learn. A materialistic motive cannot sustain wealth.